Thanks so much for the warm intro. That's amazing. Yes, hi from Mountain View. This time my home, and next session will be in the office, which is going to be awesome. There's already some people from the team actually watching in the office, so hi to Mountain View already. So let's talk about the kind of customization experience from kind of the what the agent understands out of the box, which is a really key kind of knowledge for you to understand what the agent can actually do if you just tell it something, but also how to improve that knowledge, how to bring in more context through context engineering, and then later on how to go beyond the basic kind of dropping in knowledge to really customizing it to deeper workflows. And I'm Harold Kirchner, so I work on the VS Code bits that I'm showing here, from custom agent customizations, and really trying to, over time, like make this like even more powerful and better. And we got a ton of stuff that landed in the past releases that I'm showing off here, and that's been improving. So the out-of-the-box context is really important to understand, because once you open that agent window and you understand what the agent can already do and see, if you tell it something, that really unlocks a whole lot of kind of, do you need to repeat this? Do I need to attach something? And all the other things that kind of make it nicer. And the powerful thing is that a lot of these things it's integrated into VS Code. So a lot of the things that make VS Code better in a workspace, better for you to work in, also make it better for the agent as well. On the top side, we have the Codebase and repo search. And that's what the agent usually see by default. You ask a question and like, hey, let me look at Codebase. It will use these Codebase and repo search tools. And what we get from the GitHub side is a semantic index. And that's the power of the platform. Like for most repos you open from GitHub, this is already pre-computed. So you get a really strong semantic index that allows you to search things like the authentication logic in very broad terms. And semantic index means this is mapped back to more words, to more understanding of the code base itself. So you can find login, for example, as a term by just looking for authentication. So that's a really powerful context. And that's on the right side, you see these symbols and pattern search. So that's the other thing you often see. It will use grep. It will find specific files. Because it has a great mapping of all the files in your workspace, that's the other way. It can quickly find multiple files, patterns of files, looking at folders and other things. And that's actually powered by the same search that powers also the find files panel in VS Code. So any improvements we make in speed, making capabilities will help humans to find stuff and the agent to find stuff. And yeah, terminal is one of the key features in VS Code. You can just like from in your inner loop, just run terminal commands. And again, you get the same capabilities to the agent. And that means it can run commands, but it also understands when they fail. It can monitor a long running output, and that's getting better across releases. So the terminal becomes a really amazing user or target for the agent to run powerful things with you in control, because all of these things are allow listed to allow you to really finely tune what the agent can just do and where you want to also check in. Next up, we have tests and tasks. And I think those are the first things I recommend people to set up properly in the repos. Tests, tasks, and problems even as well. Because as soon as you can work on a code base basically in a plain text editor and just run code and see, oh, this code looks right. But then once you have proper linting set up, once you have tests that you can run locally, and once you can just build it locally with a keyboard shortcut, those are the ergonomics that make humans more productive. You want those red squiggles and everything else. And so if the agent can just run your tests or run a single test or rerun failing tests, if the agent can look at your tasks, at your watch build script, you can say, oh, the last thing I edited caused an error, let me fix that. And then lastly, if the agent makes an edit and immediately gets feedback that edit caused red squiggles, that helps the agent to produce higher quality results. So really important key is that everything that you set up in your workspace, that for the agent or for the human, it helps both sides. And to just highlight this, we just shipped, or a few months ago shipped this smarter workspace cross repo search model, an embedding model that runs on GitHub that is better at finding the right code. It's a fine-tuned on code, and it allows the agent to really get faster to the right piece of code. We see that this yields to a high acceptance rate. So people see the agent understands the code better, makes the right changes faster, because it also has faster throughput. And that's how we can innovate across these elements. If anytime we improve these core context elements in VS Code or on GitHub, this really multiplies across a better experience and higher quality for the agent. So really awesome, that one. So let's look at how VS Code does this, brings this into action for the engineering team. So we do have in the repo, this is actually, just give you a quick tour. On the left side, you see the VS Code repo, which of course is open source. And then we have the VS Code Copilot chat repo. Both of them you can find on github.com/Microsoft. So if you want to look up anything of the instructions I'm showing here, they're actually in those repos, just on GitHub, easy to find. So first one is the Copilot instructions.md. And that's a repository-wide instruction that's included with every question you ask in the chat window, in the inline chat. It's used by the coding agent, it's used by code review. Any of the copilots will try to better understand your repository by looking at these instructions. In this case, we give it a quick outline of what this project is about, give it a kind of a mini map of where it should look for stuff first, and a little bit more detailed places where to look. And the key benefit of these instructions of like just pointing out which folders is the agent at any time will often look in different parts of the project, will search for the right files. And in this case, because it has this minimap, it gets faster into the right parts of the code base and therefore takes less tool calling to search, but then gets to the and has a higher likelihood to actually find the right stuff, because like sometimes things are worded the same way. If you look for observability, if you look for patterns that are across the repo, if it understands where to look for first, it can find those faster. And in general, it's just an inventory basically where things are at, and then giving it some basic idea of that we really wanted to understand the imports we're using, because these are all kind of coming with the repo and test files. How to work on TypeScript. You see we're actually pointing it to the task because that's a watch output that's always happening. If I run this, you can see basically 2 tasks being executed, and the agent can keep an eye on that so they make sure they pass. So that's the first part, and including like how to write code and everything else. But it's probably down to a 2-pager overall. So we still try to keep this very succinct, and we assume this will help any agent interaction. So you don't want to be too explicit in how the agent should work, or give it workflows other than like how to basically run the build to make sure it passes. But we have more specific instructions in other places. So let's look in the instructions folder and find these domain-specific instructions, how I call them. So one is disposable instructions. And that's basically describes a pattern we have in a code base that we found the agent understands sometimes, but doesn't always use correctly. It understands the concept of disposable, but then it makes up additional APIs that don't exist potentially, or uses it in the wrong place. So we actually gave it this like less than 1-page descriptions, like these are the things we use most of the time and how we want to use them. We have the same things for observables. We give it a few code snippets and pointed to like, these are the things we sometimes do wrong. So let's get them right. And the way these are exposed to the agent is just via description. So they're used across the code base. So it wouldn't make sense to point like anytime you work on TSX, read this. It will potentially confuse the agent because it doesn't always need to understand observables. It doesn't always need to understand disposables. And this description basically tells it like anytime if you think about observables or you're planning on observables or you see observables and try to understand it better, open up this instruction. So that's a way you can even in a larger code base like a monorepo, start customizing and start bringing in your domain knowledge from your experts. We have another instruction that has an apply to pattern. This is a prompt TSX instruction that is included for all TSX files. In our chat, we use these for prompt crafting and building prompts, and it describes this concept, again, the library, as a kind of one-pager to the agent. So both of these concepts really help to give it a higher quality output. Let's look at two other things. We have the prompts. So we have a whole bunch of prompts that help with not just development, but also finding issues, finding duplicates, think about components, like having different roles in the team, like the build champ. So let's look at one I haven't looked at before. So microperf is a new one. I haven't seen this one before. And it basically it's written by our performance engineers in the team, and they try to understand like how can we like make it easier for everybody else to look at performance and understand what's happening in VS Code. And it really breaks down basically instructions we already had on a wiki for the agent now that anybody can become a performance expert in the repo. And next up, we had the one of the agents. This one actually was a prompt before. We found it gotten so complex and it gotten multi-step. So we made it a custom agent. So it now lives in agent/data.md, and this is our kind of data analyst agent. And it's hooked up to Azure Custo, where our actual data lives for VS Code. And then anytime we look at telemetry diagnostics, like how fast does this feature load, you can ask these questions now in natural language, and we'll actually look it up in the Custo database writing queries. So it's combining the power of kind of having a workflow plus combining the power of looking at the MCP servers and actually being able to query data, which is really powerful. And then lastly, I think how just understanding another context pause, we actually had planning prompts in here as well before. So we still have like a fast plan and a plan, but now they actually, because it works so well for us, we put those into the product. So now we have a plan mode built in. Let's run it. And you see it's a really powerful pattern of how you work with AI is spending more time upfront to validate that you both understand what's happening, what's supposed to happen. And this is what the plan is built in. You can actually look at it. You can go configure custom agents, and you can look at our built-in plan and make your own. If you think about, oh, I want to always put it in document. I want to have it much bigger. I want to talk about every single file it found. I want to talk about every single file once added. I want to talk about more about APIs. Maybe I want to see a full-on API spec up front. So you can really go in, I highly encourage you to take that plan agent and make it yours. And this is the other way you can customize this, for example, is having an entry point. So for example, we have a plan fast entry point, which is just planning fast iteration. It still points to the plan agent, but then it says research as usual, but draft a shorter plan. I don't want to read as much. This is a simple problem. I just want us to both agree on the same approach, and a shorter plan allows us to do it as well. And lastly, to point out a concept I will mention throughout the talk is sub-agents. And you see that happening here. So I asked it to make a plan to make the chat to-do list editable. And it started this big chunky work. It's reading a ton of files. So that's a ton of context being gathered and the agent needs to understand. So if it wouldn't use a sub-agent, all of these files would end up in the main context for the agent. But because we have a sub-agent, it will do all this analysis and then return just the insights, what it found. Like, these are the files you need. These are the related files I found. These are some of the APIs I found. So this one becomes a research sub-agent. And then all of the main agent gets back is this analysis to build a plan. This is what it returns right now. So it will take more time. It will be more thorough. But in the end, you can still have a chat conversation that doesn't have all the context consumed from this initial planning step. It's really cool. So let's go back to the slides and summarize. So we looked at custom instructions, which are these rules of engagement, and they're always on, And you need to be aware of that. So you shouldn't go all in on writing everything into those instructions. Start with coding standards, the basics, with some of the rules for like if it's all TypeScript, like in the VS Code case, we have some TypeScript rules in there as well. And then think about like what else you would document for a first-time contributor in your code base. And you can do this automatically, actually. If you go into VS Code, click on the symbol up here, and then generate chat instructions is one of the menu items. And the agent will, again, like plan mode, look through a code base and document what it finds. And hopefully your code base has some good documentation, and as the code is kind of explainable to the agent, it can figure out like what are the best practices. It's also good at probably finding like what in your code base isn't a best practice. If the instructions are all over the place, you probably want to pick the ones that are kind of the golden rules. And so it's a first draft, and I would treat it as such. And meanwhile, the plan completed. So there's a lot of context on what it found and what it needs to edit. And then this is the sub-agent up here that completed. So real prompts, I showed a few. So these are really executable kind of one-shot commands. You execute them, maybe it gives you an explanation back, and you move on to the next task. So this would be components, maybe just looking at the tests and saying like increase test coverage here. It's a like simple output, simple input. I have one for creating commits. I have one for committing and creating a PR. These are all just capturing a few CLI commands that I then don't have to run, and it comes up with a nice message that can still shape in the prompt as well. We also have then custom agents, which I showed with the data agent or the plan agent. And these are different working contexts, like really specialized personas and workflows. And these are, I think, the main area of what I recommend to customize in. The building basically your workflows into custom agents allows you to really automate larger complex tasks. If you have a big migration, think about, can you have a migration agent, or can you even break it down into separate migration steps? So let's think about more than just these agents. Let's see then a little bit more in action. And I'm showing a lot of agents because that's like the most exciting bit right now. Instructions has been around for a while. Once you have that set up, you already get your experience to a much higher quality. And then we have the more low code, the more different workflows that you can then bring in with custom agents. So one thing that usually excites people is test-driven development. And I think I'm not the first one to say test-driven development is exciting, or maybe I'm the first one, who knows? But what's exciting about this one is how it allows you to move through different phases of the test-driven development cycle. So in this case, I have actually three agents here. So let's move this to the side. I have a TDD red, which is writing a failing test. And this one actually has something interesting in there. So if there's no plan yet, if it didn't give it a plan, it'll actually go in and run a sub-agent to research the requirements first. So usually you come in with some idea, or like, in this case, I ask it to focus on input in my chat app after creating a new chat. Simple change, but I want to make sure it's actually tested properly. And in this case, so it writes everything to a tdd.md file. And this becomes the artifact for this whole test-driven flow. So it's kind of the shared memory of these three agents is that test-driven development file. So that's another thing to think about, like what is a connective tissue as you hand from one agent to the next. And since I mentioned handoffs, I also showed that one. So TDD red has handoffs, and you saw those in the VS Code repo as well. So these are handoffs. So from a plan, I can start implementation or open an editor. From TDD red, I can start to implement. And in this case, it gives a little prompt as well, and it shows up under the red phase. So red will write one failing test. And why this is cool and maybe annoying, it's like one test only. So it makes review easier. And that's a big thing people struggle with. Working with AI, giving it a task and getting 1,000-line change back. And it's like, I did it. the perfect. It looks perfect. It's ready production. It passes tests. I looked at it. It's production code. LLMs love to be really high confidence about the code. In this case, by breaking it down in like this TD pattern of like writing one test, then making this one test pass, and then refactoring to clean it up, you can really put the human in the loop and allow that trust. And you're still like really closely working with the tool, like, oh no, this test should also cover X, or this test does too much, which often happens with AI, but allows you to review and stay in control at the most critical points in time with a specific deliverable that you can then reviewing the tests, reviewing the implementation, and then the refactoring if it makes sense, and the tests are still passing. So really cool pattern that I can highly recommend. It's on my GitHub, Chet Harold, if you want to check out those TDD agents. The next one is a pattern that I really like of how do you can work on the front end. In this case, I use the spec agent to think about a mobile-friendly Kanban board for managing AI agents. I use the Perplexity MCP agent to figure out like what is a Kanban board, what is the latest on AI agents, or grounding it in more recent knowledge, and it asks me a clarifying question. And that's all in the spec file. So it has access to Perplexity and fetch, and the flow is, if spec is empty, do research, we saw that, ask free clarifying question, pause for answer, and then do some more grounding. So you see that going on here. I gave it some answers on its questions, and then it kind of finalized the spec file. In this case, the artifact is a spec.md file. So, and it has like, it's still longer to review, but at least allows you to think about the higher level functional aspects, your use cases, your design, the stages of like, what does it mean to manage an agent? And kind of the views and how the design in general looks. So really like high level points you would bring into a meeting with everybody else. So now I can actually take this, implement it, and now I have the designer agent actually. And designer agent is one of my favorites because it has this fast iteration loop of why I want to use agents locally. I want to quickly iterate with an agent locally and see the output and see what's happening. And there's wipes. They're going to be here on the right. I should stamp this off. So the agent, let's look at what it does. It's only focusing on UX. It takes a plan, but it only focuses on UI. It doesn't care about like how do we manage the agents in the backend, how does that work. Like for me right now, the critical element with this plan is I don't know how it will look like. So I'm gonna look at is running. Yeah, and it has access to Playwright too. So that's another thing of this plan element. There we go. It open Playwright. Maximize this. And go back to where it runs. There we go. We're gonna allow without reviewing this code base because MCP only accesses this website. Good, I can see the current document and now it starts implementing. And maybe we'll pause this and use I could make it go still faster. Not Opus. Opus is great for design, but we want to iterate faster. Okay, we're going to keep this going because this is cool. Now it will make a design for us, and we can probably follow along here on the site. So meanwhile, there's another thing I did before as well. I did this a TV optimized Kanban board for managing GitHub pull requests, and actually I used a different prompt plan mockup, which is like what we're sure, like the entry point. And then I actually handed this off, had a plan, and I handed it off to different cloud agents. And now we have these cloud agents that created different versions of this variation, which is really cool as a way to think about and explore a space. And all of these are PRs in this repo, and I can check in later on how they did. Meanwhile, the designer is going. So yeah, we had There you go. So we explored abundance. We did some low-code UX mockups using the designer. It's still working on it. Try it out in the visual vibes repo on GitHub that I have on my account. But really, the key takeaway is use custom instructions. That's where you start. Resolve prompts where you start automating your chores. And custom agents is where you really specialize specific workflows and go deep into like how you want to work.